So I actually lost my dad and my brother before I was 13, and then by the time I left school, I developed some pretty severe addiction issues. It was discovering horticulture at the age of 23 that my life began to turn around. My name is Ben Newell. I'm a content creator and author, and I am completely obsessed with terrarium building. So I didn't grow up with horticulture. We didn't even have a garden. I landed a job at a school working with a 3-year-old child, and as part of his daily routine, we had to take the apple cores and banana skins out to the compost bin. He absolutely hated doing it, but I became very interested in the composting process. And then through that obsession with composting, I discovered vegetable gardening. It was during this period that I discovered how much I loved the terrarium building, and that was the one that truly stuck with me. Terrariums are particularly interesting because it's an ecosystem contained within this glass container, and a miniature water cycle occurs. So once the water goes in, it evaporates and transpires from the leaves, condenses on the side of the container and falls back down and creates this cycle. You create this little ecosystem where you can grow a wide range of plants and mosses that wouldn't grow as a houseplant. And you have access to some fascinating plants like miniature orchids, tiny creeping figs, tiny saxifraga, and an unbelievable amount of mosses, and being able to create something in as small as a jam jar or a spice jar, all the way up to a big vivarium that might house a dart frog or a glass frog. And to me, that is just completely magical. There are definitely some myths around terrarium building, and the first one is that they are self-sustaining ecosystems. I think that's not correct, because for a terrarium to last a really long time, generally speaking, it needs some interference from us in the form of watering, pruning plants, or it could be in the form of just cleaning the glass. The idea that a terrarium is going to last and look the same way that it did on the day it was planted is an unrealistic expectation. So I prefer to look at a terrarium as a miniature propagation chamber, which in time is going to change. And I like to think of that as a good thing. One of the exciting things about terrarium building is that you can use such a wide range of containers. So I've built terrariums out of Lego, I've used sweet boxes, I've used honey jars, and I've even used soy sauce bottles. As long as it's clear and it allows light through and holds some sort of humidity, then you can be creative and expect them to last many, many years. But there's nothing wrong with creating something beautiful that lasts for 6 or 12 months. One of the really, really fun aspects about terrarium building is the ability to personalize it. If you're a lover of cacti, you can create open top terrariums. If you love mosses and you love tropical plants, then you can create small tropical terrariums. You can use figurines, Lego people, small animals, anything you can think of, you can add into your terrarium and make it very personal to you. So maintaining a terrarium is relatively simple. I would keep an eye on the soil. So if it starts to dry, then it's time to water, and I would water very sparingly, using the best quality water you can find. So that can just be filtered water, or it can be bottled water. It's not like a houseplant. A small bottle will actually last a very long time with a terrarium. If you only have tap water, that's fine. It's just probably preferable to use better quality water. Keeping on top of the glass is important, so making sure that it stays clean, wiping condensation is helpful. And I think this is a really important one, is to increase airflow in the terrarium. So you can do that just by removing the lid from time to time to freshen the air inside. Or if you've used a plastic container, you can put some holes on either side to create an airflow. Getting that balance between humidity and airflow is absolutely the key to terrarium success. So if you come with me, I'm going to show you some of my favorite terrariums that I've made. This is an iMac G3, which was a project on my mind for a very long time. Inside was a CRT monitor, which I took out with great difficulty. And then what I was left with were the 3 parts of the iMac. I put them back together, cut a hole in the top for access, and I basically created it in the traditional way, applying expanding foam and silicone on the sides and then pressing coco coir into it. And then for the planting, it really was as simple as just putting some terrarium soil into the bottom and then putting the plants and mosses in. So this is a type of hypnum moss, which is sold as carpet moss. The second plant I really like is this lance leaf fig, so Ficus punctata. It's a really beautiful, small-leaved, slow-growing plant. My favorite plant in here, though, has to be this biophytum, which looks like a miniature palm tree, pushes out flowers, and within a few weeks, those flowers turn into seeds, and then the seeds are shot out. The final plant is this tiny Perosia fern, which is an epiphytic fern, but this just creeps along the terrarium and in time will cover probably a large portion of it. So this is definitely one of my favorite terrariums that I've ever made. This is another one of my favorite terrariums, and it really is just a small acrylic box that was never intended to be a terrarium, and a really simple planting method. So again, just some terrarium soil. I placed some terrestrial moss, bun moss, which is Lycobrium glaucum, and then there's mood moss. I've got 3 really nice plants. The short one with the circular leaves is Peperomia prostrata. An amazing plant, one of my favorite plants is this one just off center, is Saxifraga stolonifera yakushima, and it's a micro terrarium plant, a miniature terrarium plant. And there is a third plant, Ficus thunbergii, which is the oak leaf fig. To complete the terrarium, I added a small figurine of a hiker just here. And this was really cheap to make. It cost me about £12 for everything. And I think that's one of the really nice things about terrarium building, is that it is very accessible. So this isn't actually a terrarium, it's a mini aquarium, but I kind of think of it all under one umbrella. It's this umbrella, so terrarium, aquarium. And this is particularly interesting because first of all, it's really small and it doesn't use any tech like a filter, heater or CO2 injection. And it's actually a Worcester style aquarium. And what this means is that you start with a rich substrate at the bottom, which is then capped with a layer of sand. And because the substrate is rich, it enables the plants to grow quickly and healthily. And the plants act as a natural filter for the water, which is why you don't need the filter or any of the tech. The sand looks really nice. It has this nice aesthetic to it. It does have a function by harboring beneficial bacteria, which contributes to the overall ecosystem. Floating plant, a type of Salvinia which sits on top. This grass-like plant is a type of Eleocharis, and I have a few strands of moss just in the center. Aquatic moss especially it has a really nice aesthetic. It's very easy to grow, and it also helps keep the water clean. On the side here, there is a Lobelia cardinalis mini, and that also grows well as a terrarium plant. Just to finish the whole thing off, I added a few pieces of petrified wood and then scattered some smaller pieces at the front, because that's a good way to create a nice natural aesthetic. There's also a little snail, a little bladder snail in here, who consumes algae, goes to the toilet, which then feeds the plants and almost completes that cycle. So this is a desiccator jar, which is actually really heavy. I basically just threw a load of cuttings in here. I had no real idea of what I wanted to do. And sometimes that's my favorite thing with terrarium building, is just the way plants naturally grow. And this is marsh pennywort, which can be grown as an aquatic plant, but really it's a boggy plant. And so this terrarium has quite a wet substrate. These are actually edible, though I've never actually eaten one. It grows like a weed in certain parts of the world too. There's a really interesting kind of moss here. Well, there's 2. So firstly, this is an aquatic species called Vesicularia montagni. And again, a lot of aquatic species of moss grow perfectly well in a terrarium. You can actually see how it's starting to grip this piece of cork. I just love that. So it's just creeping along the cork bark, and in a few months, this will just probably be covered. But the most interesting kind of moss is this Perobrium dosianum in the middle. And it sort of like grows very upright. It has these very beautiful leaves that grow on reddish stems. And even the bits that have died off here, I like the way that looks. So I never really shoot for perfection, and I just like to leave things. The Saxifraga, which I showed you earlier, was actually cutting taken from this mother plant here. And again, I just put a small piece into this terrarium, and then over the space of 6 months, it's really spread out. I really love to view terrariums as little propagation chambers. The likelihood is they're not going to last forever, but in time, as the plants grow, you can just take divisions from the terrarium and then use them elsewhere. And that's such an enjoyable aspect of terrarium building for me. So if you enjoyed this content and you'd like to see more, please subscribe to BBC Gardener's World magazine, and thank you very much for watching.